So, good day and good evening, good morning to everyone. And it's a funny thing to be sharing here and now with different time zones and different places. It's a wonderful way that here can be at different time zones, or now can be at different time zones at the same time. Something like that. So, I think it's maybe useful to think that human beings are using their imagination all the time, and imagination is more subtle than flights of fantasy, and but rather it's the little images that we have of what's going to happen, what did happen. The imaginings, when we imagine people, when we meet them, we imagine things about them. We imagine what's going to happen tomorrow. And sometimes these imaginings are detrimental, they undermine us, especially if they are kind of frightening or disturbing imaginations that we do over and over and over again. They kind of slowly kind of begin to create a mood, a disposition, and almost maybe sometimes even a personality by the constancy of what we imagine. And so meditation practice is certainly a wonderful time to learn how to put down some of the imaginings that we do. So when we let go of thoughts, we're also letting go of imaginations. And when we come back into the present moment, we're letting go of what we imagine or assume will be tomorrow or other times, other places. But we can also use imagination to give us a kind of a little edge, a little clarity about oomph, to stay here, be present, ride this out. And, so I've used lots of analogies over time, and these analogies are all acts of imagination. It gives us a sense, a feeling for it, kinesthetic, an association that can give a better sense of what it means like to stay with something continuously than if the instructions are, okay, sit down and stay with your breath and don't leave it. But this idea of riding a scooter, and every time that your mind wanders off, we push back into the present moment, and then we coast along on the present moment until we need to kind of come back again and push again. Or if we're staying with the breathing, the imagination that it's like waves, and as I've done frequently, or like we're surfing on the waves. The in-breath is the lifting us up on the wave, and then the out-breath, we're surfing the front of it, going down. Or maybe not surfing, just simply kind of gently being lifted and falling. When my son was quite small, had trouble sleeping, I sometimes had him imagine that he was an otter floating on its back to sleep at night, and on the top of a wonderful, peaceful sea, the kelp forest all around underneath, and that the gentle kind of swells would come up and down, and that with his breathing, he was the otter that was being lifted and settled with each wave. And generally, then after a while, he'd fall asleep. And so all these little acts of imagination that, not to put us asleep here, but to encourage us to stay here. This is what it's like. So as I said yesterday, the Buddha gave one for breath meditation, which is that of a lathe worker holding the lathe knife, I guess, or the chisel, so that against the wood that's going around in the lathe. And in order to cut the wood properly, the chisel has to be in continuous contact with the wood. That's how it it chisels away. And so I guess this idea of a lathe turning around and around was the Buddha's analogy for the cycles of in-breath and out-breath. And the awareness somehow is like the chisel, where the kind of the point of awareness is really centered someplace with the breathing, and then it doesn't leave. It just stays there, and stays connected to this, goes around and around. And if that kind of image doesn't mean much for you, an image that when I was in college, I took a massage course, and the instruction was that if we had to get more oil to put on more, for massage, to continue with the massage, to never lose physical contact with the person getting the massage. So you have to always keep one hand on this, touching the person's arm or something as you reach for the oil and put it on your hand. And so this idea of always staying in touch and contact. And contact and touch, I interpret to be the physicality of breathing, the physical experience. Just stay there with your chisel, or stay there with your hand. Stay there on the waves riding up and down. So don't be busy with all those images, but these are images that can be used. One of them maybe speaks to you. And if using the image is better than the alternative, meaning that you're less likely to wander off into thoughts and imaginations which are not supportive for you, then stay with the image until the image no longer is needed and you're able to stay there with the breathing. So taking a meditation posture and gently closing your eyes, and even saying the word gently, closing your eyes, and I hadn't thought about it, but also evokes the imagination, the idea of gentling. And maybe it has value that travels beyond just the eyes. And then sitting quietly and gentling the body. Shifting gears so that you are settling down into your body, your embodied experience. And taking a few long, slow, deep breaths. Big swells, big waves that lift you up, expand you. And then down the other side of the wave as you exhale, relaxing your body. And letting your breathing return to normal. And then softening, relaxing parts of your body. And as each parts of your body relax, imagine it's becoming soft like a cotton ball. Relaxing the muscles of the face. Softening the shoulders. And softening the belly. And also as you exhale, softening the mind, quieting the mind. Stilling the mind into a soft place. And if any part of your body, mind feels hard, brittle, maybe it's your awareness, which is like a soft cotton ball that gently supports or holds whatever is hard, challenging. And then to settle into the body's experience of breathing. And feeling the sensations, physical sensations that come into play as you breathe. The sensations of inhale are different than the sensations of exhaling. And then settling in to stay with the sensations of breathing. And so some continuity, like you would a chisel against a bowl being lathed. Or like the continuous contact of the waves as one floats on one's back on the gentle swells of the ocean, lifting up and lifting down. Or the continuous stroke of a masseuse as we receive a massage from the inside, as the lungs expand and contract, as the diaphragm pushes and releases. And settling in gently, steadily. See if you can have continuity with the breathing. Letting the thinking mind become quieter, softer, stiller. So the center of gravity of attention shifts from thinking to breathing. As if breathing is the center of the universe. As if breathing is home for these minutes that we're meditating. riding the waves of breathing, letting go of imaginary futures, imaginary other places, the imagination of things which are not here and now, and to use the imagination instead to be intimate with our lived experience of here. Allowing yourself to feel whatever satisfaction or gladness that comes from not being lost in thought so much, not perpetuating thoughts which are undermine you, trouble you. Glad to be intimate here and now. Perhaps even allowing yourself to feel the joy of just being alive, breathing, just content, sitting here, breathing, feeling, embodying yourself. The more that we are preoccupied in thought, distracted by thinking, the more that we're lost in imagination, the less in touch we are with others. The less we are distracted, the less we're preoccupied, the better what's best in us can come forth to meet other people. Love, gratitude, compassion, friendliness, all shine, all flow most easily most manifest when we are not distracted, not preoccupied, when we are present for others. That's the vehicle, that's the channels by which our positive attitudes manifest. And may it be that to whatever degree that you're more settled, more intimate with yourself, calmer, clearer from this meditation, may that register for you. May you take that in, feel that, and imagine how you can stay this way or stay close to it so that your warmth for others can be palpable, expressed. Your love, your compassion, your kindness can better flow. And may it be that what you learn about being non-distracted supports you in greater goodwill for the people around you, known and unknown, strangers and intimates. May it be that what you learn through this practice is a means by which you live a life that betters the life of others, in small ways, in big ways, in intentional ways and unintentional ways. May the benefit and the merit of our practice together be for the welfare and support of all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. So we've taken a little bit of a pause of moving through the next steps of the 16 steps of mindfulness or breathing to really look a little bit more deeply at this particular way in which the mind works, the use of imagination in the mind. And I'll talk a little bit more about specifically the Buddha's use of this word imagination. And I've read sometimes people say that there's no Pali word for imagination, but there actually is. It's a little bit of translator's choice, but I think there's a good argument. And I'll talk about it tomorrow, the words that have to do with it. And they have a lot to do with, they also relate to this idea of self and not self, which is so important in Buddhism. But for today, I want to, so this kind of pausing to look at imagination is a preparation for next week when we start looking at the mind more carefully and what goes on in the mind, the mental activity. But to create the right conditions for supporting investigation and a deeper letting go in the mind is part of the function of this earlier parts of anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. And to the more sense of well-being that can come in meditation, the easier it's going to be to really work with the mind. I've told the story many times, but I love the story of when my son was in kindergarten. Once a week, they would play with beeswax, with the little wax, and when it was time for them to play, the wax had been sitting up on the shelf, and it would be usually in the form of whatever animal they made the week before. And they would, but it would be hard. And being hard, it would be brittle. And the only thing you can do with any of it would be to break it. And little animal legs could be broken off easy enough or something. But what they would be instructed to do every week would be to put the little piece of wax they had in the palm, between the palms of their two hands, and just hold it there while the teacher told a story. And by the time the story was over, the warmth of their hands had softened the beeswax, so that or whatever kind of wax it was, and so that then they could make these beautiful little figures, animal figures or whatever it was they made. But you had to have the warmth to soften it. So the same thing with the mind and the heart. In order to make it into something beautiful, to move it towards freedom, it helps to soften it and warm it up. And the good feelings, the calmness, the joy, the happiness, the well-being, the contentment, the calmness that we sit in, are all kind of creating the right conditions to begin softening the mind, so the mind can be more pliable, more flexible, more malleable in the best possible way, so that the healthy mind, the healthy functioning of the mind, can operate smoothly and easily. So on the way to do that, the cultivation of these deeper states of well-being that come in meditation, the mind is actually used to do that. The mind is always being used. The mind is being used to apply the attention, to sustain the attention, but it's also used to, it can be used supported by the imagination. And the Buddha uses a lot of similes, and rather than thinking about them as being active and intentional uses of imagination when we sit down to meditate, it's more like we learn those similes, internalize them well enough, so that they're kind of in the background of the mind. So the mind associates meditation with those similes in a kind of a natural way. The similes create kind of a positive kind of view, orientation, that supports us to be present. Now, it's very easy to have lots of imagination which is not so helpful. We can carry a lot of unconscious and conscious associations, bias, fears, projections onto our experience, so that we kind of are creating kind of an unhealthy or unsupportive environment for our practice. The simple imagination that I'm a lousy meditator, I can never do this, that's also kind of an imagination. It's kind of an idea, a thought that creates a certain atmosphere, which is a little bit, in extreme forms, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we're completely preoccupied by the idea that I cannot meditate, then you probably can't because of that preoccupation. And and so there's also fear. Like there's people who there's fear of what's going to happen if I open my heart in meditation, if I relax and really feel what's here. And there might be some good reasons to have some caution, but to have chronic anxiety and kind of vague imaginary ideas of why or what's going to happen is not really supportive for the process of deepening in meditation. We have to be wise about that anxiety and caution, not feel bad about having it. It's there for reasons, but we want to try to work with it and find another way of being. So when the Buddha offers all these similes, he's providing, he's kind of seeding in the mind associations and imaginary associations, which then begin to create a different atmosphere for what we're doing and what meditation is about. So whether we bring up these imaginations actively, or we just let them sit there in the background, both of those are supported by really knowing these similes, knowing these imaginary kind of scenarios. So this comes into particular play with deepening of concentration, what's called jhanas, deepening states of absorption, that really kind of settling in and really being present in a clear, continuous way, almost like there's a state shift, so that, oh, now I'm here, I'm present, it's clear, I'm here. And the Buddha doesn't give a lot of descriptions, kind of prose descriptions of these states. He describes them a little bit, but to really get a feel for what the Buddha is talking about, he provides similes. Many of the times he describes what they are, he then follows up with a simile for each of the four of these absorptions. And these similes, if you can kind of feel your way into it and kind of let it kind of live in the feeling of it or the sense of it, or almost imagine that you are the simile in some way, then something begins to be kind of an atmosphere, a context is being formed, an association that awakens something inside of us that's not the imagination, but rather the felt sense of what the Buddha is pointing to. So the imaginations for these similes for deep states of concentration where there's a lot of well-being, three of them use water as part of the simile. And often in the kind of symbolism of the Buddha, water represents the mind, and perhaps the clarity of the mind, or the awareness itself of the mind. I think maybe awareness, maybe more than the mind. And so we're getting a sense of how to work with awareness, or how to relate to the awareness, or how to notice qualities or aspects of awareness as we settle into the practice. And so there are four of these, and I want to read the similes for you, and maybe you can kind of let it sink in for you and kind of imagine that you're somehow this, you can feel this with your body or feel it with inside. The first one begins with a simile that's very much, in modern world maybe we would associate it with making dough with flour, where you sprinkle water onto the dough and knead the water in until it's all the flour is moist. And in the ancient world, it has to do with taking a certain kind of powder, soap powder that they had, and making that into a kind of a ball. So, just as a skilled bath person or a bath person's apprentice heaps bath powder in a metal basin and sprinkling it gradually with water, kneads it until the moisture wets one's ball of bath powder, soaks it, and pervades it inside and out, yet the ball itself does not ooze, so too a practitioner makes the joy and happiness born of seclusion drench, steep, fill, and pervade this very body, so that there is no part of one's whole body unpervaded with the joy and happiness born of seclusion. So here there's awareness, in kind of my kind of description, that comes along with joy and happiness. So we're sitting in meditation, there's feelings of well-being, and then one gently kind of kneads it, massages it, or spreads it, or expands it through the whole body. So no part of the body is not moist with this goodness of joy and happiness. So, so it implies that there's a kind of engagement with the process. So not just opening and allowing well-being there, but in a certain kind of way, gently, lovingly, kind of maybe each time we breathe, kind of opening and filling, opening, stretching, letting it kind of ooze or letting it like spread through the body. So there's a little more active involvement, and this is where the mind is a little bit more involved in staying there, stay present, be with it, work on the breath, the in-breaths and the out-breaths. As the mind gets stiller and quieter, there's no more needing, no more work is needed to stay present, no more work to spread anything or cultivating it. And so the next level of absorption, so just as though there were a lake whose waters welled up from below, and it has no inflow from east, west, north, or south, and would not be replenished from time to time by showers of rain. So there's no streams flowing in from any direction into the lake from the top. It's only an upwelling of a spring from below. Then that cool fount of underwater water flowing up in the lake would make the cool water suffuse, completely fill, and pervade the lake. So there's no part of the whole lake unpervaded by the cool water. In this way, one suffuses and fills and completely fills and pervades this very body with the joy and happiness born of Samadhi. No part of the body is unpervaded with joy and happiness born of Samadhi. The third absorption, just as in a pond of blue or red or white lotuses, some lotuses that are born and grow in the water thrive immersed in the water without rising out of it. And cool water suffuses, completely fills, and pervades these lotuses to their tips and their roots, so that there is no part of all these lotuses unpervaded by cool water. So, one experiences happiness in the same way, one experiences happiness with the body that the noble ones describe when abides with happiness of one who is equanimous and mindful. One suffuses, completely fills, and pervades this very body with happiness. No part of the body is unpervaded with happiness. So the joy has stopped, which is more active and energetic, and now it's just happiness. And then the final one is just as though a person were sitting covered from the head down with white cloth, so that there's no part of one's whole body enclosed, not enclosed by the white cloth. So, one suffuses and completely fills and pervades this very body with mental purity, mental clarity. No part of the body is unpervaded with mental clarity, just as the idea of surrounded by a white cloth, so no part of the body is not touched by this white cloth, is the idea that there's no outside stimulus anymore, and there's no clear, defined body anymore. It's kind of, you can't quite see it, but it's there. It's covered, and it's there's softness to it, the soft, clean cloth that touches it everywhere. So we go from working the joy through the body to feeling the joy as being a very peaceful, quiet lake with whatever we've experienced kind of floating in this stillness of awareness, happy awareness, to becoming so quiet and still that the body begins to recede and very peaceful, safe, quiet, equanimous, and characterized by a kind of mental purity, mental clarity or cleanliness that's there. So this is the closest we get to the Buddha really describing these states of concentration. And I don't know if they mean something for you or whether you kind of they evoke some imagination for you. But if they evoke your imagination, then these are things to kind of take in and internalize a certain way. Some people memorize these descriptions, and then they're there in the background for the mind to kind of perfume itself, or perfume meditation with dissociation, and associations which might be a lot better than some of the other ways in which your imagination is influencing your experience. So thank you, and may you enjoy, and may your joy and happiness have a chance, have the opportunity to spread and pervade and soak your whole body. Don't get so distracted that you don't allow your well-being, happiness, and joy a real chance to really be felt and be experienced in this body that we have. So until tomorrow, thank you.